what to do if you're in a crisis of faith and or are having questions that are unanswered from God. So I've done a whole bunch of videos today about a lot of things. In the previous video, I was talking about how faith is it shocks me how a lot of Christians and a lot of people in the faith or who've left the faith never really had faith the way that I think they thought they did, because because faith is the foundation. So if you didn't have faith, you were not in the flock, unfortunately, I have to tell you. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you can build that faith, because as I said in the previous video, I'm not going to leave you guys alone. I'm not going to leave you guys in the in the trenches trying to figure out what the hell and what the helly. I'm very much going to explain to you guys like just a few tips in this video of how you can start to like build a relationship with God, build your faith, and what I think are the fundamentals. I did actually write a whole entire little mini booklet for this Bible study thing. If anybody wants me to send it to them, like I don't know where I'm supposed to post these things, but I would just post it. But where? Because it's like a document that's got a whole bunch of pages in it. So if anybody can give me any ideas, but otherwise I'm gonna can I make a PDF of the link or something? I don't know. Anyway, if you would like that booklet, please just ask me. I can email it to you, absolutely free and whatever. Anyway, so it's about building a relationship with God, and it's got 5 stages to it. The fundamental part 1, right? And this is why this is important, because a lot of people's faith, the reason why they struggle is because they have unanswered questions or concerns or things that don't add up in your life. And that's where we're going to start, because that's where I would start. My relationship with God as it is now did not start because, oh my gosh, I grew up in church. No. That definitely was why I gave my life to Christ initially. But how we got to where we are now, it was not because of that. It was because I started to ask God the tough questions. I was asking God questions like, how can such and such person call themselves a Christian when they did blank? How comes us as Christians today are just as brokenhearted as the rest of the world? And when, your people of God in the Bible, when they had you, they were thriving. These are the questions I ask and the key to getting these answers is this, and this is the key to faith as well. I feel like it's the foundation, is you have to trust that God is who he says he is, right? And even if you don't trust that yet, at least use that as like an assumption, like how we would do in equations, like when I was studying. By the way, a lot of equations, I just like to say a lot of scientific research, there's a lot of, we don't really know what this is, so we're going to assume that it's this. And I'm like, that's not the empirical science. Everyone thinks it's all exact, it's all calculated. The deeper you go, especially when you start going up the quantum route and all that stuff, there's a lot of assumptions. So there'd be a lot of numbers that we would use. They're like, well, we're not really sure about this, but we assume it would be around this amount. And it's like, so who are you to assume anyway? And why am I trusting in your assumption? And then why are we now going and speaking like this is gospel? That's why I'm like, if anybody's being fair and honest and humbling themselves, objectively outside of faith itself, science is about just as trustworthy as any religion is, because there's a lot of holes over there potentially as well. So this is why this is so important. Anyway, so you have to believe that God is who he says he is. So again, you can just assume. So like, just put it in your head as in like, let's assume, even if you're not there yet where you do fully believe that. Let me look at my situation or my question as in this way. If God is who he says he is, what would be the reason this is happening? So if God is who he says he is, and God says he's a provider, for example, why do I not feel provided for? Why is my life like this? Or if God says he is loving, why do I feel not loved? This is what actually opens the door to start a proper faith-based relationship with God. Because now he can respond to you. Because if you just shut him down, it's like before, because this is what we do in relationships, right? You're getting to know somebody. Like, this is why I feel like you got to get to know God, just like how we get to know people. When you're getting to know somebody, you ask questions. You don't just assume, you wait for answers. Part of the reason I feel like relationships these days are so bad is because people make so many assumptions these days without just asking questions. And a lot of that is because we have things like social media. So you can go on somebody's like my YouTube. This happens to me all the time. People go on my YouTube, see my YouTube videos. I've had conversations. It almost never ends well, by the way. Anytime any man has ever tried to speak with me who's met me through YouTube. it doesn't go well. And let me tell you why. Because they then have all this assumption. First of all, most of them have not watched the entirety of my videos. A lot of you guys who've been here, you guys, I feel like, have gotten to know me. People who just pick me up while I'm in whatever random season talking about whatever random topic that I'm talking about, they'll talk to me as if they know everything, and they've assuming. It happens to me a lot in general. Like, a lot of times people say that, oh, well, you're this and you're this and you're this and you're this. Or like, another example is this whole star sign thing. We now live in a society where we have all these things that we've decided to inform us about somebody. All these words, oh, I'm a Capricorn and I'm an introvert and I suffer from ADHD and I'm, you know what I mean? And we have all these titles. It's like we just don't get to know people for who they are. We get to know people for what like the other thing, like I've said to you guys, I've suffered this a lot, which is why I sympathize with God and I feel bad for him, because if I've experienced this as a human, as one person who's also, you know, as a human, has suffered with this all the time with us, right? Where people will assume things about God because of what somebody else said, but you haven't got to go to him first. This has happened to me so many times. I talk about it all the time on my channel, how it shocks me when people, like, you know, they speak to me and they're like, oh, wow, you know, I didn't know. They clearly have been told about me by somebody else, right? They make a decision. Maybe they don't talk to me. Maybe they cut me off. Maybe whatever, right? I don't hear from them. All of a sudden, these people want to step in. Like, I come across these people and I discover that they're shocked because how I am isn't what they thought or what they were told or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but you never even bothered to ask me. Or they'll believe a lie. And it's like, they never bothered to ask me. They just went with what the other person said. They never came directly to me. But yet went and made all these big decisions. This is why I'm saying this faith thing is so important, because then you don't want to like not have gone to God directly and actually really given him a chance. Not Christianity, not whatever, not your pastor, not a preacher, not a whatever, your auntie who loves God. I'm talking about God directly. And there's this almost like unwritten kind of lie in Christianity that it's hard to speak with God. It isn't. What it is you have to build a relationship, just like how you have people in your life, right? If a random person off the side of the road comes and knocks on your door, sorry about the light, guys, but I'm not changing this position right now because we're in it. You're just gonna have to deal with this lighting situation. Although, can I sit out of frame? I'll sit out a bit out of frame. Hold on, let me just adjust myself. Yeah, I'll sit back here because it's less distracting. But okay, is it even? Hold on. All right, whatever. Anyways, if somebody's on the side of the road, yeah, walks up, knocks on your door and says, hey, can I just like crash here for like a week? Like, I just need somewhere to stay. I have got a new place I'm moving into. My stuff is in storage, but my Airbnb fell through and they haven't been able to refund me and I don't have any money to stay anywhere else. Like, can I just crash on your whatever? You're going to be way less likely to say yes to that person than because they're a stranger. But a friend you've known for like 5-10 years, you're going to obviously be like, of course you can. What do you mean? Stay as long as you need to. Well, I would anyway. I don't know. This, like I said, love don't live here anymore. So these days people don't want to do anything that requires anything of them in relationships. They just want to be able to say they love you with minimal effort. But you get the gist. In one aspect, that you behave differently and things are different because you've built a relationship. And this is what I'm saying. You have to build the relationship in order to fully benefit off of the benefits. So like a lot of people, what they do is their relationship with God is as good as, oh, I do all these things. I go to church, I read my Bible, whatever. You're not talking to God. You don't have a relationship at all. And your prayers are always about you, about your life, and about your worries. If he doesn't do anything for your worries in your life, you're done with him. I often ask God sometimes, like, what's on his mind? What is on his mind today? You want to talk to God about what's on your mind. What about what's on his mind? What about I'm shocked all the time at what God wants to talk with me about. Because when I go to the Lord to talk, I'll be like, God, let's talk about what's happening in the world. What are we doing about the kingdom of darkness? And he'll be like, I want to talk about you. How are you doing right now? Because right now I'm concerned about you. What do you mean you're concerned about me? You know what I mean? Because I'm assuming, again, in my own human wisdom, and because I'm unaware that I'm going to do all this. God's like, yeah, don't worry, I'm aware of everything. What about you? And it's nice because now I realize he does that because he realizes that there's no other opportunity for that anyone's going to do that in my life. And so he does it. Because he's like, no, I need to make sure you're okay. That's what my topic, and it does annoy me because I'm like, God, I don't want to talk about me. I don't want to talk about me. He's like, yeah, we should talk about you. You know what I mean? Or he'll talk about something completely left field. And it's because, again, in his infinite wisdom and in his will, this is how we pray amiss a lot of times. We are praying for things and we're praying because in our own wisdom, because we don't have that relationship with God. And so anyway, going back to my tips, I was about to give another example. I would say start with writing a list of questions you have for God. And when you take that list, ask them to the Lord, expecting a response. Just wedge in there, assuming that everything you say about yourself is true. Then why? You could even write that as the starting sentence. Why have you allowed this to happen? Why have you allowed this to happen? And come with an open-minded thing. This is what I'm trying to say about relationships. You got to be open-minded. You get to know somebody. You don't just assume from what you heard. You don't just things like your leaders and stuff. They're there to help they're there to help steer you. But you still have to be the proactive person getting to know God. All the different people in the body of Christ, in the different roles within the body itself, they're all to help us all together to stay on the straight and narrow, right? So like even me and my videos, I'm not the God for you to go and talk to. I'm here to produce food for thought, for you to then go and do the work, because I spend a lot of time with God. Like, you'd be surprised how much time I spend, hours on end. And again, if you're struggling to make time for God, that should show that your relationship is in a crisis state, right? And again, how are you then going to understand? Because the more you get to know God, the more you understand why he does things and why he allows things. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, people get upset about things like a wilderness season, for example, where God might allow you to be in a particular situation for an extended period of time. You're like, God, why would you allow that? God's like, I'm allowing it because I need you to build up the muscles. Like, this is the Lord taught me, that in the wilderness, you build the reliance on God. You're not reliant on the world. You're not reliant on the world systems. You're not reliant on the validation of others. You're not reliant on yourself, because you have to learn to rely on me. That means that when you become where I'm taking you to the promised land, you're not going to be corrupt. You're not going to be swayed by money, power, and fame. You're not going to be swayed by success. You're also not going to forget me, because I am now the number one in your life, and I am now what is everything to you. So all of the other stuff doesn't have any effect on you. And that's again why I believe so many people, once they become successful, once their prayers get answered, they leave God out, because you were never developing that relationship and where he was becoming your everything in the wilderness. So as soon as he now gives you what you're asking for, or you get it in another way, maybe, now that relationship isn't there. And again, the Bible says, John 14:6, I'm the way, the truth, and life. The only way to the Father is through me. It doesn't say the only way to heaven. So again, if your only reason for talking with the Lord is all just about you making sure you go to heaven, then you're being selfish in the relationship. And I feel like most people are forging a very selfish relationship with God that is simply based upon, you do what I want and how I want it. And if I don't get to do what I want, how I want it, and if you don't do that, then I'm done. So that's why I'm saying that, yes, we have to address the questions. We also have to understand that if you want to experience what it's actually like to have a relationship, then you got to treat God like he's a person. Do you see what I'm saying? You got to treat him like how you would treat somebody in a relationship. You take the time to get to know them. So that's what I do. I have my questions, and then I go and do the research. You know what I mean? In the Bible, if I have a question about a certain thing, I'll ask God a particular question, and then I'll go and look in the Bible, and I'll go and see. Like I said, I'll say to the Lord, God, if I believe that everything you say about yourself is true. You are love. You know what I mean? You and everything you do is from love. So why would you allow this and this and this and this to happen if you love this and this? Joseph in prison. It's like Joseph in prison could be like, God, how comes I'm supposed to be like, I saw that dream. What do you mean? Are you a liar? It's like, no, you could. That's again where I'm saying the enemy will always attack your opinion of God when it comes to faith. It's like, no, God, since you are loving, and since you made the promise that I was of this dream where, my family and all these people are bowing to me, how am I in prison right now? And God, in his infinite wisdom, is like, well, my friend, you have a big important job to do, and that is interpreting the dream of Pharaoh that is going to provide food in this upcoming famine that y'all don't know about, that's going to protect not just Egypt, but also your family, and I need somebody that I can trust, who has strengthened their skill of dream interpretation. So what better place to have absolutely all the time in the world to be interpreting dreams than in prison? Because you can't work, you can't really do anything. So hey, just pop around, guys, what we've been dreaming about. See you in cell number whatever. What you dreaming about, you know what I mean? So there he's building up his skills of dream interpretation, you know, because even with things like that, it's like he's probably noticing now this theme again, every time I have this theme keeps coming up. That must represent this. Maybe I don't know if he had access to any types of scriptures at that time or whatever, but he's building up that skill so that when it comes to Pharaoh's dream, and he's like, and again, because he's submitted to the Lord and he has a relationship, he says, if God allows me to interpret it, I will. So he acknowledged that it's God who was giving him the wisdom to understand these things because they built that relationship in prison. That's like how David, when he was with the sheep and God was helping delivering him from the lions and whatever, protecting his flock, they built the relationship together. Do you see what I'm saying? And so when we're talking about faith, your faith has the foundation is a relationship above all else. And I promise you, if you focus on that, God really will do everything else. Because I can tell you that's what I do. Somehow the days go on and somehow things happen and everything figures itself out. As long as I just focus on my relationship with God. And that's why I believe, the Bible talks about keeping your eyes on Christ, keeping your eyes over there. As you're doing that, God, because also you're talking with God, he's keeping you and taking you where you need to be and what you need to be doing. It's like when I went to Poland, right? It was a very abrupt decision. It was a very impulsive decision, but I just felt like instantly, and I'm used to this thing with the Holy Spirit where I instantly feel just a sudden urge to do something. And I was like, in my head, I wanted to go skydiving, okay? But I was like, I can go to Poland. I knew somebody there. Just go. No plans whatsoever other than going to see the person that was there. And let me tell you, so much went down while I was there. So much went down to the point that, like, I saw Jezebel. I saw all these different things. I ended up going to this church where they're like, Mary appeared here. I learned about the Polish culture. I learned about a lot of history. Obviously, I had the whole situation. This dude on the plane had asked me to take me out here and there and in London before the plane freaking door even shut, you know what I mean? Which made me start to rethink actually a lot of my experiences with the male community and how I hadn't really realized that I do get a, significant amount of attention, but it had gone over my head because I was so busy in my head that I just never really noticed. And how much I've learned from that and, just this and the dynamics between men and women and then Jezebel and then I meet Jezebel and then Jezebel does whatever Jezebel does and it was insane and a lot of things happen, you know what I mean? And there was, and I just went with it. And I just focus on my relationship with God and I just focus on that. And I'm like, God, and I sit there on the plane every time it's like I'm traveling. And it's so fun. Can I just say, it's like going on an adventure because that's where we are now, where it's like everything is an adventure with God because I'm like, I don't know what's happening next, but I'm excited. But then sometimes it's things I'm definitely not having fun with, like when I was in hospital. And I'm just like, this is the ghetto. But then I would laugh at the realization that, okay, I see why you're doing this, God. You know what I mean? Because the more you get to know him, the more you actually address the things rather than ignoring them, the more you start to understand how he operates. That's what I'm saying. When you ask those questions, it's like, some of the things that we're struggling with, like you might say, God, oh, if you're so loving, then how comes, I don't know. Let me think of an example. Let me go somewhere deep. Hold on. Let me think of a really good deep example. Okay. This is a deep one. So, and I have an example of how I saw this. So, for example, somebody might say, God, if you're so loving, then how could you let X individual, let's say they're a close family or close friend, right? Or even a pastor or a preacher or some kind of church leader. Why did you let me in my life experience that person violating me sexually, right? And you guys know I don't want to call it victim, but I'm a survivor, I guess, of that exact type of situation. So that's one question I think a lot of people, they get internalized, like all the pain and everything you feel and you target it towards God. But what I found, like in addressing that question for myself, is that I'm actually grateful because this is the world I'm living in and this is what people over there are doing. And if not for the fact that I've experienced it myself and I've gone through I've seen the effects, I wouldn't have the opinions, the level of empathy that I do for the people who have, and I wouldn't be such a good person to fight against it happening. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, to be honest, with the blood of Christ, I can wash those things away. Can I just say that those, for me, are not even the worst of the things I've been through, in my humble opinion. They're really not. Like, other things that people have done that were not physical have had worse effects on me, I would say, because of my, whatever. But, and I saw this in 4K where there was somebody, some people that I knew, right? I've seen this happen twice. There was some people, one example is there were some people that I knew, and one of the two of them, it was a couple that I used to know. And the couple, the husband, he had two sisters, and they grew up in, let's just say, their dad was horrific, and he violated sexually one of his sisters, right? Now, into her older age, obviously she's considered the super heavily emotional one, and all of these things. And a lot of people don't get it, right? When I heard the story, and knowing what it feels like when somebody that's in close proximity to you, like I said, there's a close friend, close family within the church, do something like that to you, is something that if you haven't been through it, you won't understand how the deeper level of it being somebody so close. Because I'm thinking, that's her father. Like, the exact opposite of what a father should be is what happened to her. So yeah, why are we surprised that sis is like this, especially when it seems no one's taking it that seriously? She's not getting the help. Of course she's in that position. And that's why me and her, like the couple of times I met her, when I used to know these guys, we used to hit it off, because there was a part of me that once I knew that information about her, I understood everything that I needed to, and I just was a lot nicer, and I had just a lot more grace, because I was like, you know what, I know what it feels like when there's a trusted individual that violates you, and then when it hits you as an adult, because some of the other people didn't get it, who haven't gone through something like that. They were like, I don't understand. I think one of the people had even said, I think they need to be put into a psych ward. I was like, excuse me? On medication. I'm like, excuse me? They've been through a traumatic event. You try going through that. Like, you try experiencing something like that, and then tell me if you think she's crazy. I think the fact that she's at least trying to go on, she's not on the side of the road as an addict. She's very much a functioning adult, you know what I mean? Doing what she has to do, living by herself, doing whatever. We should all be clapping for her, because that's a significantly traumatic event, and especially to have then obviously clearly grown up without the support. So to me, I feel so grateful when I get to be in situations where I'm like, you know what? I get it. You know what I mean? I get what it's like being there, because I've been there. So when I'm asking God, why would you allow this to happen? That's why. So then there can be somebody that can understand. There can be somebody that can combat it. And maybe, just maybe, I can also be the voice or the protection for others. And if it turns out that because of that, right? Like when I think about the kids in the underground tunnels, this is why I'm so passionate about that. If me going through that means I end up helping hundreds of people and prevent that from happening to them, praise Jesus that it happened to me. Because look at me. I'm fine. I'm okay. The Lord heals. The Lord delivers. Whatever, anything that could have happened to me, the Lord can deal with it. You know what I'm saying? I'll give you, and what was my second example I was going to give you? What was my second example? I think about this. I use this with the children as well, when I'm teaching them, because obviously I teach maths and science, right? Maths and chemistry mainly, and physics. A lot of times when they're getting distressed, I tell them the stories of when I was at school. I tell them how I cried on like every results day, except when I went to uni, and that was only because I got my uni confirmation before I got the results. Had I got the results first, I would have cried again. I say every time I got my results, I used to cry. I wasn't the best in class. I wasn't like in the gifted and talented. I didn't get 15 A's at GCSE. You know what I mean? Ironically, I got 4 A's. Maths, chemistry, religious education, and then this other project that we got to do where we'd have to write like essentially like a paper and which I ironically decided to write about abortion, hence why I know so much about it to this day. So it's just funny that the three things that I care about the most in terms of academics, those are those subjects I did well in. But, and I tell them, and you should see the shift in their face when I say to them, like they kind of relax, because their assumption is obviously, if I'm here teaching them, I won't know how they're feeling. I don't know what they're going through. I'm like, I know what you're going through. It was stressful. It was tough. You know what I mean? It was brutal. It was hard. I would sit there thinking, why don't I get this? Why have I made this mistake? I tell them the stories, and it helps them, because then they feel like they can do it. And so it makes all those tears that I cried so much more worth it. And it also makes me feel happy that I get to be somebody that other people can relate to. You know what I mean? It makes me feel like I'm successful. It makes me feel like I'm winning. It's part of the reason I do the job in the first place, is because I don't want other people to feel like that. So by me showing the kids that, hey, look, that might have happened, but don't worry about it, and them being encouraged, them being built up, I'm literally working against the kingdom of darkness. I'm literally doing God's work, because that's what the devil wants to do in the education system, is destroy everybody's spirit. And again, this is why I feel like there's so many scientists and mathematicians that never discovered themselves because they were never in the right environment, which is again why I'm so passionate about that. So this is what I'm saying, is in when you're trying to build this relationship with God, you have to really be prepared to get to understand that he is looking at the greater thing for yourself and for others, the greater thing. Because I'll tell you the truth, when I see people who lack empathy or people who don't get it, I'm so glad I'm not them. I'm so glad. I'm so happy that I've been through the things I've been through, and I've made the mistakes that I've made. It's brought me here, because I'm stronger for it. I have empathy. I can get along with everybody. I can understand where people are coming from. I can help people a lot of the time. Other people were looking confused. Like I said, people are confused. Like, how can you teach maths? And I'm like, haha. People think, oh, wow, you must be so lucky. Oh, you must be whatever. I'm like, you know what? Part of it is a gift, I do believe, from the Lord. And then part of it is also, I went through the system. I know how the system works. So I know you know what I mean? I know. So I can do that. You know what I mean? Like when I see people going through things, so I don't judge anybody. This is why I don't sit there judging somebody for whatever behavior that they do, if they're whatever. Because I'm like, listen, you don't know what that person's going through. You know, and you don't know what that person's going through. You might be sitting there judging them, and the only reason you're in a position to sit there and judge them is because you haven't been through anything near what that person has been through. That's like what people do in the entertainment industry with the celebrities. People be like, oh, the celebrities, oh, they're so lucky. Like, how could they be doing drugs? How could they be doing this? They're suffering. Duh. Of course, people, if they're happy and their life is thriving, are not going to want to ruin it. So if they're ruining it, chances are they're not happy. Then as the world goes, oh, but you should just open up. This is why I'm so grateful again. Like I said, people always say, oh, well, you should just call someone. Listen, for all my years of all my mental health struggles, I've seen psychiatric doctors, I've talked to normal doctors, I've been on the phone with these lines of this that people recommended, or somebody called me and put me on the line with this, whatever. I've been through all the little different departments of the people that are supposed to help you, both in the world and the government's provisions, the world provisions, and the close and personal friends and family positions. And I can tell you, some people really don't have anybody to talk to. So when people tell me I have no one to talk to, I'm not one of those ignoramuses that goes, oh, but I'm sure there is. No, sometimes there isn't. That's why my relationship with the Lord is so close, because I'm like, he's the only person I can actually gives a crap. You know what I mean? Enough. It's the only person who hears me out. And I know that from trialing it, because of him, for me seeing that, for me asking the questions, him answering, me opening up the door to the relationship, you know. And like I said, addressing things, because I feel like a lot of times God will honor us for actually investing in the relationship. You know, again, why do some people get the secrets of the Lord and other people don't? I've seen some people look at me sideways, like I even had somebody say to me wow, you in a kind of like an almost jealous kind of way, like, wow, you really have a lot of dreams and visions. And I'm like, mate, that's available for you. You go and spend as many hours with the Lord as I do. Because while people a lot of the time are sleeping, right, and enjoying your 12 hours or whatever you feel like you need every night, not to say sleep isn't important, because it very much is very important. Otherwise, God wouldn't have created us to need to sleep. But maybe actually we didn't sleep before Adam and Eve, though, because our bodies didn't need to regenerate because we were eternal. But anyway, I'm up with the Lord. If I have to choose, I'd rather choose that, because anyways, the Lord gives me life, so I'm not tired. Like, I don't get tired. Like, people be surprised, like, oh, like, you haven't, like, I'll be like, oh, I didn't sleep since 2 days. Like, I would obviously try to sleep afterwards, but they're like, how did you even live like that? I'm like, this living life dwells within me. I'm literally talking to God. So it's like, God, please. And I'll just ask him, like, can you just supernaturally download rest into my body, because I don't want to leave this conversation. And then we start to have that dialogue, and I do the work. Something, you have to do the work. You have to actually invest your time, and like invest, not just read the Bible for the sake of reading the Bible. Read the Bible, find the scriptures, and go and look. Sometimes it's like, does the Bible say anything about that? Like, that's what I always think is a good question to ask yourself. So when you're having an issue with something, ask yourself, does the Bible actually say anything about this? Because a lot of times if you go and check, you'll realize, oh, the Bible does say something about that. And then when you realize that, you then realize that, oh, God is who he says he is. And the problem was actually something else, or the point was actually something else. I'm trying to think of an example. Hold on, let me give you an example. Give you an example, right? In Ezekiel 8, you can go and read it, right? God brings Ezekiel to show him something, which I'm going to summarize for the sake of the video, but you can go and check it out for yourself. Essentially, he brings Ezekiel to show him that there are people. So you might say, my question to the Lord might be, God, if you're good and you're loving, how comes your leaders seem to be doing sketchy things behind the scenes? How does that make any sense? How come we keep hearing about leaders with all this taking advantage of children and this one, that and the other, or whatever? Or even the priests sleeping with little boys. That's another good example. Let's start there and then we'll come back to the second one. I have an answer for that. First of all, God's like, well, actually, if you see, Jesus is the final priest, so priesthood isn't even anything to do with me anymore. That was an Old Testament thing before Jesus came. And now, because Jesus is still alive, he is the final priest. And those guys were just stand-ins to represent to you guys the concept. And now I've brought you the actual, they were like not the prototype is the wrong word, but you know what I mean? Like, so your question, that's what I'm saying, if you just go off with, oh, because they call themselves a priest, that must be a person of God. No. You need to do the research, because once you do that, you now understand, oh, God's not even there. I have nothing to do with that. So all these rules that the priests have, oh, shock. No wonder a institution that God isn't a part of is doing heinous things. Question answered. Boom. He has nothing to do with it. Right? Second example. Again, but not necessarily the priesthood thing. But in Ezekiel, God brings Ezekiel to show him, right? That there was people in the church doing things in the background. Leaders and stuff. And Ezekiel's like, and he brings him there to say, and he tells him, like, you know, go and look, there's like a hole in the wall or something on the wall. And he goes and looks, and he goes behind into like the temple or whatever. And actually they've got all these hidden symbols, and there's all insects and stuff, which I think is representing like kind of gods that like the Egyptians and stuff were worshipping, because, you know, they had a lot of these like insects and stuff. There's all this demonic worship, because all these demonic gods, they all have their own symbolisms. So basically, God says to Ezekiel, they're doing these things because they think I can't see them. They think I can't see them. These people don't have a relationship with me. Because if they did, if they knew me, they would know I see everything. So those people don't even believe that I am who I say I am. They're just using my name, but I'm not even there again. So it's like so many of the issues that people have with God when it comes to faith, it's because you're not prepared to ask the questions. And then when you ask the questions, unfortunately, the body of Christ should be more prepared to answer those questions for you. And hey, look, guys, ask me anything. And if the Lord wills to give me the answer, I will help you out. I appreciate that a lot of our questions get shut down. And that's because the church of today is ill-equipped and is filled with imposters. There's some of it, they're just ill-equipped. They haven't done the research themselves. They're not strong enough in the faith. So how can they answer questions about somebody they barely know? Others are imposters and know they're imposters and are just here to take advantage of you, so are not obviously going to tell you the truth. Because it's not favorable. Think about it. This is why they love this whole works-based faith thing as opposed to faith-based faith, because that requires that you go and do stuff with them. I can have an independent relationship with God. That's not good for anybody who wants to take advantage of you. If you can go directly to the source. If I can go directly to God for healing, I can go directly to God for deliverance. I can go directly to God to teach me stuff. That doesn't help somebody who's trying to build a business. That doesn't help somebody who's trying to fill their pockets. That doesn't help somebody who wants to have a bunch of people kissing their butts so they can feel good and have the fear, and they have a fear of man where they want to be worshipped by others. That doesn't help. So of course you're not going to get to hear that message in a lot of places for those two reasons. And that's what I'm saying. You have to start with the building blocks at the beginning. That's what I would say. Start with the questions you have and then just go on the journey. But you got to be open-minded, and you got to actually give God a chance to speak for himself. And you can't just be demanding on your terms, because none of us do that in normal relationships. When you start to get to know somebody, maybe at first, you know what I mean, you might see it's like, you know, when you start to get to know somebody, you talk, you have conversations, you go back to your places, you think. You stew on what they talked about. They stew on what you talked about. Over time, you get to see each other again. You talk more about things. You talk in between. You build. And then eventually, you might become super close. You know what I mean? Where, you know, it's like you're maybe in contact 24/7. Maybe you live together. If it's like a relationship, maybe you end up in a relationship. If it's like, as in like a romantic relationship, if it's a friendship, you end up becoming like, you upgrade to best friends. Maybe you guys even still move in together, like, because you both of you needed to move and you end up getting a house together because you're really close. Or, you know what I mean? And like, you know, your big life decisions start to also be impacted with that person, you know, because again, a lot of times, you know, sometimes we're angry at God for not doing things, but it's like, we are the ones who have already made all the decisions for the relationship, and we're just trying to get God in to come along with whatever we're doing. And God's like, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. You don't come in and then inform me about what we're doing. You know what I mean? That's not what we do here. We both talk, you know what I mean? And it's crazy because I've noticed God does care about what we want. There's certain things that God does for me that I'm like, he just does it just because he loves me. And I want to do that thing. And it's actually not even necessarily part of his bigger purpose. It's just like, oh no, just enjoy yourself. You know what I mean? He does care. So I don't want you to act like that. But I'm just saying, like, we have a very selfish relationship with God. Be careful you don't do that, because I noticed that in a lot of Christians, your whole relationship with God is about what he's doing for you. And a lot of people who are in the faith or fell away from the faith, you don't actually have any faith. A lot of people fell away from the faith. I'm going to do that as a separate video. I don't know why I'm on such a roll today, but I have so much to say. I don't know. I woke up in a new Bugatti. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I'm going to talk about that. The real reason I believe a lot of people fall away from the faith in my next video. So if you want to hear about that, but yeah, your starting point, if you're trying to build a relationship with God, is to go head first and firstly address all the things. Because the thing is, it's like with the kids, like when I teach kids, when they have questions, that's why I always encourage them to ask any question, even if it sounds stupid. Because if they don't, there's always that niggling thing in the back of their head about, but what if they're supposed to do that? And that's what often throws them off doing the work properly. So I'm like, just ask that so that it can be put to bed. So we can be sure. If you're wrong, now you know that's wrong. And if you're right, amazing. Either way, we've progressed positively, because now if it wasn't that, then we can now figure out what it is. If it is that, now you can be more confident the next time you're thinking something like that. You'll know you won't take as much time to second guess because you've addressed it now. And that's what I'm saying. Forget trying to just do all these things to prove yourself to him. Get to just getting to know the guy first. Start with that, and start with whatever is the wedge that's in front of you. Because most people who do not believe in God, I truly believe you just have things about God that you are undealt with. And that's why no matter anything else you can do, whatever else you do, and I'm going to unpack this in the next video, whatever else you do, it's not good enough. Because you're not actually getting to the point of the wedge in between you. How are you going to move to get closer when there's this whole thing, there's this big barrier in between you of those questions? So just get straight to the questions. Assuming that everything you say about yourself is true, and start writing those questions down and start to work through them. Because you'll find at first it will seem claggy. At first you won't feel like God is speaking. But as you just go through that process, eventually you'll start to realize what your dialogue is like. How God speaks with you. You'll start to realize he's actually answering your questions, and you'll start to actually realize how you guys can talk. It's one of those things, like I said, with relationships, you don't wake up and then tomorrow you've made all your decisions about somebody. You get to know them, and then as you're getting to know them, you guys get to know each other, and then you start to have things like your own private jokes, your own little secret languages, your own little things where you reference something that you guys remember that you guys did together like 2 years ago that nobody else knows about, that makes you guys laugh. You can just look at each other and like burst into tears of laughter because you know, without even speaking, because you're so close, that you now have that thing. And the hard and the difficult lesson, unfortunately, I have to tell you, is you just need to start now, because you can't just build all of that up overnight. You have to stay the course. You have to get in there, you have to stay the course, and you have to commit to the relationship. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that we struggle as Christians these days, because we're just like the world. The world is not good at committing to anything. Hence why a lot of people are losers in this life, because winning takes commitment. You have to see throughout your whatever decision you make, you see it through no matter what, even when it's hard, even when it's, whatever, it's tough, even when you're being pushed to your limits, you see it through. You see it through to the end. That's the only way that it happens. But we see nowadays, we don't know anything about commitment anymore. And that's why our relationships, whether it be family, whether it be friendships, whether it be with the world at large, the community, are so pathetic and shallow, because no one really wants to commit to anything. No one really wants to weather the storms. No one really wants to do the hard work and face up to the hard truths and have the hard conversations. I saw a post the other day, and this goes, I was thinking about other people when I read it, but this actually goes along with what I'm saying now. And the post was like, we'll never understand how some people will forfeit an entire relationship because they're not prepared to have one uncomfortable conversation. Don't forfeit an entire potential relationship with God, an entire human relationship where you get to enjoy the life and the abundant life with Christ on earth as well as past earth, because you're not prepared to have that uncomfortable conversation. Because a lot of times the questions that we have, they might make us feel shame, or they might make us feel pathetic. You know what I mean? Asking some of these questions, because you realize how real some of the stuff that's happened to you might be. But you just got to go there. And that's why I say pride is something that is so problematic, because it means that you're not prepared. That's why I feel like being younger gives us an edge, because we're not yet, haven't developed all this pride, and we don't necessarily think we've got everything figured out. So we are more open to being told that, like, hey, we're teachable. We're more teachable, and open-minded, and there's less, and we're more humble. Because it's like, what have we got to stand on to be prideful about? The older you get, the harder that gets, because then it's like, you don't want to, I can only imagine what it feels like to maybe say being 60 and be like, wow, I can imagine how humbling it could be to be like, oh my gosh, I've spent my whole life, getting to know God, or I've spent my whole life like this, or I've spent my whole life with that. And to have to face up to this, or to be suffering with this at my age, I'm sure that it feels horrific. But I promise you, the only thing that's more horrific is staying in it. Is that one conversation or conversations? So do that with the Lord. Give him a chance. Go to him directly and try your best to actually keep it with you and him. Because sometimes the other people around, if you're not there with the Lord yourself, sometimes you could be being led astray. And I believe a lot of people are being led astray. Try and really foster a relationship with God that is based between you and him. Right? That's again where a lot of leaders take advantage of, I'm like your middle point. That's why the Catholic Church loved that whole thing of, we get to know from God, we hear from God, and we share with you. Because then you're reliant on them, and that gives them the power to manipulate. That's why you got to form that relationship with God where it's between you and him directly. And it also gives you the reassurance, because I want everybody to experience what I do, where I talk to God personally, and it's amazing. And I'm sure, and I truly believe deep down, a lot of people, that's what they really want. They don't want to have to go to somebody else. They want to experience that relationship with God for themselves. Anyways, guys, I'm going to talk in the next video about, what did I say I was going to talk about in the next video? Why I believe a lot of people fall away from the faith. Yeah. So anyways, guys, this video, I can't believe what's happening right now. But anyways, flags together, play to win. God bless you all. God loves you. I love you. I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.